Formula One is a business. As much as we as fans want to see it as an entertainment sports spectacle, at its core, Formula One and autocar racing in general is a business. And things were like this ever since the 1930s, possibly even earlier. One only has to look up the 1936 Tripoli Grand Prix. Back then, a deal between German and Italian officials was laid out so that an Italian racer would win the Grand Prix, Tripoli being an Italian territory. So yeah, it can get political from time to time, this world of fast cars, strong personalities and mammoth amounts of money being thrown around. And with more and more exposure thanks to the media getting added into the mix, F1 can get extremely controversial at times. I'm Chip from the Digital Grandstand, and here are just 6 Formula 1 Grand Prix where egos, unadulterated ruthlessness and sometimes just plain stupidity turned a racing event into a much bigger story. Honorable mentions: the 1976, 1989 and 1990 Japanese Grand Prix. Something about Japan, eh? But these received so much cover that it'll be redundant to talk about these. Instead, let's take a look at number 1, the 2010 German Grand Prix. Let's start off with one you almost certainly know about. It produced one of the memes of the decade and the phrase that I'm guessing will haunt poor Felipe Massa forever. One radio message from the Ferrari pit wall received by the Brazilian that will live in infamy. Okay, so Fernando is faster than you. Can you confirm you understood that message? Needless to say, race leader Massa slowed down and allowed his teammate Fernando Alonso to take the win that day. Team orders were not allowed in Formula 1 in those days, and the team had to pay a substantial fine, rightfully so. To add insult to the injury, Massa's longtime race engineer and personal friend Rob Smedley was the one that delivered the controversial message. Number 2, the 2005 USA Grand Prix. In one of the most infamous Grand Prix of all time, the starting grid at Indianapolis Motor Speedway in 2005 featured only 6 F1 cars. The problem? During Friday practice and the quali session on Saturday, spectacular tire failures occurred, most notably on the Toyotas. Investigations followed and tire manufacturer Michelin concluded that their tires would last for only 10 laps off the track. The issue was presented by the banked Turn 13, part of the Indy 500 oval. All Michelin rubber runners withdrew after the formation lap on Sunday, leaving only the 6 cars running Bridgestone tires to compete the race. Suffice to say, this was not well received by the thousands of fans that came there expecting a thrilling Grand Prix, and they received a warm fart. I think it's fair to say that F1's reputation in the US never truly recovered since. Number 3. The 1973 Canadian Grand Prix, the race that saw the very first safety car. Even though it was not until 1993 for this procedure to be given a proper name and rules to be laid out, the 1973 Canadian Grand Prix saw a yellow Porsche 914 take to the track after a collision on a wet track between François Sever and Jody Scheckter. With absolutely no rules in this sense and with official time measurement systems in their infancy, the Porsche stayed in front of Howden Ganley, who was the leader of the race at the time. What made things really blow out of proportions was that the track was quickly drying out and all drivers came into the pits for slick tires. Moreover, Motorsport's park pit lane was incredibly small and drivers had to wait for others to make their pit stops before making their own. It was all a shambles. After 80 laps, the official announcement came that the race winner was Peter Revson, but not everybody was that sure. Colin Chapman thought that his driver Emerson Fittipaldi was the winner, while many believed early race leader Ganley won the damn thing. The official result stood though, and the world of Formula 1 moved on. Number 4. The 2007 Hungarian Grand Prix. The race was a pretty straightforward affair. What wasn't though was what occurred during the quali session. In the final minutes of Q3, Fernando Alonso stopped for a quick change of tires so that he could have another go at pole position. However, he was stationary in the pit box for more than 30 seconds. His teammate Lewis Hamilton, who was queuing up behind him for his own change of tires, ran out of time and couldn't go for another flying lap himself. The stewards ruled this as a deliberate block by Alonso on Hamilton, and the Spaniard received the 5th-place grid drop for the start of the race. Not only that, but McLaren would not be allowed to score any constructors' points in this race. Was this a deliberate sabotage by Alonso as the greater Spygate scandal was brewing behind the scenes? or a simply retribution from an agreement Fernando and Lewis had earlier that year that Hamilton broke. The discussion continues even to this day. Number 5. The 1982 San Marino Grand Prix. The FISA versus FOCA war. This was a race that saw almost all private teams boycott the race by not taking the start. As a result, only 14 cars lined up on the grid, with Ferrari and Renault the only competitive machines. By lap 6, the fast but unreliable Renaults were out of the race, and Ferrari, running an unchallenged 1-2, signaled their drivers to turn their engines down to prevent failures. Leader Gilles Villeneuve took this message as a hold station, don't race each other instruction. Didier Pironi, running in second place, thought the message meant that they were free to race but without using full power. A duel between the two Ferraris spiced things up in the latter stages of the race, with Pironi taking the win and Villeneuve left fuming, as he declared afterwards he will not speak to Pironi ever again. And they were still not on speaking terms the day Gilles died during qualifying for the 1982 Belgian Grand Prix. Prophetic words indeed. And number 6, the 2008 Singapore Grand Prix. Of course, it's this one, it'll never not be this one. The greatest race-fixing scandal in modern-day Formula 1 occurred at the first F1 night race. Fernando Alonso, oh, hello again, having left McLaren after only one season, rejoined Renault in the hope of emulating his championship-winning years of 2005 and 06. It was not to be. McLaren and Ferrari were in a class of their own in 2008, and the Spaniard was consigned to the midfield. In the latter stages of the season, Renault had improved, but wins were still not coming. So, arriving at Singapore, managing director Flavio Briatore and engineering director Pat Simmons hatched a plan. The team's number 2 driver Nelson Piquet Jr. crashed his car on purpose in order for the safety car to be deployed. Having made his pit stop earlier, this would promote Fernando Alonso to the front. On a track like Singapore, where it's fairly difficult to overtake, this meant Alonso would score the win that day. The full details of Renault's plan would surface almost one whole year later and resulted in sackings for Pat Simmons and Piquet Jr. and a lifetime ban from F1 involvement for Briatore. As for Alonso's victory, that went unaddressed. And that's our list. Did I miss any out? Let me know in the comments below. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe for more F1 related content. Thank you ever so much for watching. I'm Chip from the Digital Grandstand. You can find me on Twitter at chip_DGS, and I'll chat to you again very soon.